by telling a very short story. I remember distinctly when I was about 8 or 9 years old, walking around the streets of Chicago with my grandma and my grandpa and my brother Josh. And I remember we were walking over the bridge from Columbus Drive to Michigan Avenue. And my grandfather stopped and he turned to the skyline and he said, "This is Chicago." And I remember I could feel the reverence for the city in his voice and the way that he just said that to me. Today, literally today, this is how I spent my day. The first half of my day, I went to Jones Metropolitan High School. And if you've ever been to Jones Metropolitan High School, it's the high school in the South Loop, newly built, and it is a castle. It is windows that are from the ceiling to the floor. It is courtyards and light and airy. And I watched a young man tell me how he writes programs so that he can print things from a 3D printer. And I was in awe because I could never write something like that. And then I left there, and I got into my car, and I drove to Chicago Vocational Career Academy, which most old Chicagoans know that it's the Chicago Vocational Academy, CVA, on the southeast side of the city. And that school has had some investments over the last years. And actually, when I walked in, I was sort of wowed because the first thing I hear is classical music as the kids are changing classes. And the kids are going to class, and there's a voice that comes over, "You have 3 minutes to get to class." And I go to the office, and I talk to the principal there, and he tells me how he's really struggling and striving to give these kids a really good education. But it's up against a lot of odds. And in the next year, the big grant that he had from the feds is going to run out. And once it runs out, then he's back to where he was. And I said, "Well, what can you take from the $6 million that you've had over the last couple of years?" And he was saying, "Well, we did professional development, but you can give kids what you can give kids, but once the money runs out, the money is gone." And then after that, I left there, and I went to a social service agency in Roseland, and there talked with a social worker who works with kids under the age of 6 who have been exposed to trauma, and tries to help them to deal with the trauma because their behaviors are making it difficult for their lives and their families' lives. And I was talking to her about the fact that money for her program is running out because there's no state budget, and that's how her program gets funded. And after this, I get in my car and I'm driving back. I'm driving, through Roseland, through Chatham, on the way back to my house in Woodlawn. And I'm thinking to myself, this is Chicago. Chicago is beautiful. Chicago is a skyline, but Chicago is also heart-wrenching. Sometimes it can just make you furious. But it's also, there's like poetry in the places that you never expected to find it. There's wonderful things that you find in schools that you think, this is not a great school. And in all corners of the city. And I cannot tell you how privileged I am to be able to cover this city, this Chicago.